You ready?
I don't have a promise to restart. I don't have a clip for my thing.
I guess just hold it.
Yep, are we all ready? Good evening and welcome to the Brockton School Committee meeting for the Audit Firm Selection Advisory Committee. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Tonight is Wednesday, November 15th, and it being 7:04. I would like to invite everybody to stand and salute our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And so in addition to attending in person, the public can view this meeting by way of television on Comcast channels 98 or 1071 and an HD version, and also online by way of the link www.youtube.com/TheBrocktonChannels. My name is Kathleen Ehlers, and I am the Vice Chair of the School Committee. I'll be conducting this evening's meeting in the absence of our mayor, who is technically not absent. He is with us tonight, but he is recovering from COVID, and so he's in the audience but not chairing the meeting this evening. I'd like to now open this meeting using a roll call vote and establish a quorum. Mr. Homer?
Here.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Here.
Ms. Azak?
Here.
Mr. Sullivan?
Here.
And I'm here as well as the Vice Chair. So let's begin. First of all, I just want to talk a little bit about the three audit firms that we are interviewing tonight and that are presenting for us. The first one is PKF O'Connor Davies.
Chair,
Yes.
I need to acknowledge the three community members.
Oh, I do need to do that. I'm so sorry. We have three special guests with us this evening that we have invited from the community to be part of this audit selection. This was very intentional for us to be able to bring community members in to be part of this decision. And I'd like to give each of them a chance to introduce themselves to the audience. There you go.
My name is Elizabeth Byers.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for being here.
I am Rochelle Etienne.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and welcome. So the first audit firm that's going to present to us is PKF O'Connor and Davies, and they will be presenting for approximately 7:05 to 7:25. The second is RSM US LLP, approximately 7:25 to 7:45, and then Markham LLP will be presenting between 7:45 and 8:05. At this time, I would like to invite PKF O'Connor and Davies to the floor and to the podium for their presentation.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair, Mr. Mayor, members of the committee. Thank you very much for inviting us here today. My name is Beth De Silva. I'm a partner at PKF O'Connor Davies. And a little bit about me, I am a forensic accountant. I have been a professional accountant for 30 years and read about the budget deficit in the paper earlier this fall, late summer, and decided I was very interested in assisting should you need assistance. So thank you for having us here. And I just want to very briefly, I know we only have 15 minutes, but I'd like each one of us to just say a few words because we each bring a little something different to the table, and I think with all of our lenses, we make a very good and unique team for this particular assignment. Jackie?
Hi, I'm Jackie Reinhart. I'm a principal with PKF O'Connor Davies and the Forensic Valuation and Litigation Support Group. I have over 16 years experience in public accounting, forensic accounting and investigations, and both with public and private organizations. Thank you for having us.
Hi, I'm Joseph DeFanti, partner at PKF O'Connor Davies. My background is 35 plus years of audit experience for cities and towns, including school districts. And in addition to that, I also do a significant amount of fraud investigations in government clients. Thanks.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Michael Melanowski, and I have over 25 years in municipal experience.
from financial management, being a CFO of a community, to town manager. And I've been in your shoes dealing with some of the largest budget busters that we have with special ed and the transportation cost, and worked with our superintendents in different communities I've been within and business managers to provide the proper forecasting so that when issues like this happen, we know about it sooner rather than later, and then set up more procedures to make sure that we don't have these issues that we've had in the past. So thank you.
Okay, so this is sort of our brief agenda. We wanted to give you a brief flavor of what to expect. We imagine many of you have not gone through something like this before, so we don't want to get stuck on all the details, but we thought just sort of giving you an overview would be handy. And we want to tell you why we think we're the best team for you and why we would be good collaborators with you on this particular project. And then we want to just share with you some of the independent research we've already done. There's a lot of data available publicly, and we've already taken a look at that. So just know that if you go with our team, we're kind of up the learning curve, and we think we can get started right away because we've already started looking at some of the data that's available. So with that, here are some of the phases that you could expect when we dive in. And one of the main things that I want to take you through on this slide is that it's really important to us to understand your concerns and then build and hone in the scope around what your concerns are, and getting a little bit more clarity on what you're thinking and collaborating with you based on other investigations that we've done in the school space, in the municipal space, to sort of guide you and make that a real partnership so that we can create a really tight work plan and be very efficient. Next, we would identify where are the sources of data, who will we work with, who's our point person, where can we gather data, not just hard data, electronic data, but who can we speak to, who can help us understand the budget, how was it built, what are the underpinnings, because that's really going to help ground us on where to go next. And then from there, we'll create the work plan. So that's just sort of a flavor on what you can expect from us as we move forward. Then sort of moving into the next phase, so we've spoken with you, we know where to hone in, we've gathered some data, now we're really going to analyze, crunch numbers, and I think the important thing to know here, we could have shown this to you more like a wheel, because it's not sort of linear, we're sort of learning as we go. We'll dig into data, we'll talk to people, we'll do some testing, and then we're going to have more questions, and we'll circle back, ask some more questions, gather more data, do a little bit more analysis. And I think the other important thing from this slide is that it's going to be sort of this continuous communication, because we'll be asking questions, asking for more data, giving you status updates along the way, and then ultimately giving you sort of a preliminary findings, and then obviously the final written report that you want. So I don't want to do all the talking, but that's those two slides. So why PKFOD? And I think why don't we all just sort of take turns here? The client-centric focus. We're here. We're very nearby. I have a working office on the edge of Weymouth, and we do have the language skills. You'll see in our proposal, one of our teammates, Anna, is fluent in Portuguese, and we are comfortable that if you need other languages as we're doing our work, we have those in-house. And I don't think that having the report in 4 languages will be an issue. We will get that done for you. So Jackie, I don't know if you want to take the end.
Yeah. So we, Beth and I work a lot together in forensic investigations, and we have several tools that we utilize to help us digest information. So, we're going to be interviewing people, trying to understand your processes, your internal controls. We also look at a lot of data in Excel and spreadsheets and analyze and look at trends and variance analyses and try to understand, in this case, what happened, why is there this deficit, where, where are the funds being spent, were proper controls being followed and processes being followed, and what are your processes? And going into our third bullet here, we do think we have a really great team. Beth and I have a lot of forensic investigation experience. Joe is very experienced in government and municipal organizations, and Michael also has that experience and has sat in your chair before. And as we move forward, we can talk about a specific example of a municipal, a school district that we worked with in a very similar situation. We worked with a lot of different municipal entities that have these same challenges and same things happen. And ultimately, we want to help you understand what happened, why it happened, and what can you do to make sure it doesn't happen again.
I think, Joe, did you want to talk about the Munis?
All right. Munis is your software, which is a pretty common software. I've probably been working with Munis for 20 plus years because a lot of communities use that. So we have very specific knowledge of the reports it could generate and other information that's available that will help us out in this process.
And I guess just to focus on some of the municipal work in Massachusetts, as we know, many of these services that have the largest drivers of your budget deficit are exempt from public procurement. And because they're exempt from public procurement, it takes away one of the safeguards to kind of analyze that. With that, you will be looking through that analysis and figuring out what additional policy measures can the board, and we'll make some suggestions as to how we can provide some additional safeguards so you have additional levels of control and analysis so that, again, you can kind of monitor the changes, because as students move in and out of the district mid-year, it's not something you can budget for. But what are the flags that can be dealt into the proper systems to make sure that you're aware when those come up before they become an issue?
And I think just lastly on this, we have tools in-house that we utilize quite often when we do investigations like this that will help us get through large amounts of data quickly. So we can automate things like cash flow analysis and other things. And that's just part of the way we work, and it makes us more efficient. And then I think lastly, just the proven track record. We have 3 decades of experience investigating, and at least 3 decades in the municipal space as auditors, and at least 2.5 decades as in the industry itself. Okay, and so we've touched on this, but clearly we've done this before, and we have an example on the next slide of a very similar situation with a dire budget deficit. But again, I think it's worth repeating. We've got the years of experience, and we really do have a unique group because we have someone from the budgeting side, we have the audit side, and then we have the investigative side. And we think together that we're really going to be able to bring all these perspectives together and make a really efficient team and a really thorough team. Anyone have anything to add on this side? I think we've said it a few times, but it's worth saying. So this is the example, and I think Joe can dive into this.
Okay. So I think in the proposal it asked for a specific and a similar experience. So this community had, town of Trumbull, Connecticut, had the same exact issue, in addition to some other concerns. So this is something that we've kind of already done and have a methodology and have a lot of good information built on what went wrong there. Some of the items that were mentioned, special ed, transportation, and in their case, it was salaries and having position control and that type of thing that kind of allowed the budget to be overspent. So these are some quotes. The report was about 80 pages or 70 different recommendations that helped them kind of prevent this from happening again, putting in the right procedures. The interesting part of this case also, or this engagement, was that the next town over then called me up. The superintendent was brand new, and he said, I saw what you did in Trumbull, and could you please come in and on a preventer basis kind of go through what we're doing and make sure we don't end up in the same situation.
So this is sort of a sample, what a sample report might look like, just so you know what you would be getting sort of at the end. Obviously, it would be tailored to you and to our findings, but you can see it's pretty robust. There's a lot of exhibits. We'll give you examples, and we'll go through the specifics of the areas that that collectively we agree we need to drill down on. And it'll be in written form, like we said before, in the languages that you would like. So this I talked about earlier. So as I mentioned, we've tried to find publicly available data so that we can orient ourselves and think about what a work plan might look like, start to organize our questions and see if we have any sort of preliminary observations. So, we've sort of collectively been talking a little bit. I think you've heard some of what we're thinking so far, but really we would like to work with you to determine what your concerns are before we get too far down the road. But as I said, we really have taken an interest and have looked into what we can find so far. Okay. And a lot of what we have other examples. We pointed out the Trumbull because it really was a very similar situation, but there's others that are also very similar in size to your budget that we've also worked on, and those were in our proposal. So that's really our summary. I think we put a lot more detail in the proposal, but these were sort of the main points that we wanted to bring out, but we're happy to take questions on this or anything that was in our proposal. And I guess for the record, I will state that no one assigned to perform the audit is related to any current Brockton elected officials or Brockton Public School employees, nor has anyone assigned to perform the audit financially contributed to any current Brockton elected official.
Thank you for that. I'm assuming that you received the list of questions earlier today.
Yes.
I would like to address some of those if possible.
Sure.
One being time. What do you anticipate the ETA being on this investigation, this forensic investigation for us? How long do you think this would actually take to come to completion?
Right. So we've talked a lot about that. So a lot of that is going to depend on the scope that we set at the outset with you. But we are prepared to begin immediately, so we don't see any delay. Once you decide if you decide you would like to engage us, we can start right away. And again, going through the phases, I think it would take, I don't really want to speculate until we know exactly what the scope is, but I can safely say it's not a couple of week exercise, unless we decide that that's what the scope is, that it's a very small exercise. I think it's going to take longer than that.
Longer than a couple of weeks?
Yes.
Yes, I believe it probably will as well.
Yes.
Just saying.
But I think, I think we did, in the proposal, we did outline sort of a sample calendar on the phases and how long we thought it would take. But again, understanding from you and refining that scope is what we would do first. So it could vary from that.
I do have one more question.
Sure.
In terms of reporting out,
yes.
One of the things that I personally would like for us is if you see something that is glaringly obvious and it is a policy or process that exists today and has not been changed, is that something that you will communicate to us immediately, or would we have to wait till the end of your investigation?
Well, typically we would like to know, so who is the point person, right? Mm-hmm. Because we'll want to let you know our status as we go along. We're going to have follow-up questions, and we're going to need someone to introduce us to the people who will have data and will be providing us with reporting and setting up meetings and things like that. So we will need sort of that point person, and yes. So the answer is yes. We customarily would provide sort of a status update along the way in any assignment. And so if there is something glaring or something that we think needs to be remediated immediately, we would provide that communication.
Okay, we have a couple more minutes, so I'd like to open the floor to some of my colleagues. If they have questions? Mr. Sullivan?
We have Chapter 70 money that comes in, as well as a lot of grants that come in at all different times during the year. Is that something that you can handle, or does it matter to you? The grants come in separately, like all throughout the whole year.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, part of it is we're looking at what happened last year, but the cash flow for the grants, that certainly would be looked at, because that could be related to the deficit and as far as expectations and where expenditures were recorded the first time versus that. So that would be part of what we're looking at, but the timing of the receipt would be included in that. It's more the timing of the spending will be critical to understand.
This is just a general question. We have a deficit of $14.4 million. It seems like a lot to me. Is that easy to find, or is that harder to find because it's so much?
I think it'll be easy to identify, because I think you already have some of the areas that there is a deficit. So the harder part a little bit is understanding how it occurred. So is it just special ed related? Was it some of the specific transportation to special ed? Was it salaries? So initially that will be in some of the reports, but then understanding how you got there is, looking at the budget support. Was that calculated correctly, or was it just expenditure overruns? Like Mike had mentioned, that kids move into district for special ed, and you have to deal with that. And then I think the more critical part is just understanding, again, like Mike had mentioned, is the reporting. Just when that happens, where's the communication? So you have to tighten spending so this doesn't happen. So just knowing that and having systems that alert you to these things are changing in real time, so that the board can react accordingly.
I know other people have questions, but one final one. If you find something criminal, is that where do you report that? Does that go to the press, the news, or come back to us?
It'll come back to you, whoever you're assigning, like whoever the point person is, but yeah, it would come back to you first and then to take action after that. But
I'm talking about everything, not just the criminal part. In other words, all the reports come back to the school committee first before it goes out to the public?
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I'm assuming that would be confidential.
That is correct.
Thank you.
So again, you're our client, so you're who we report to, so we don't talk to the press unless you're authorizing us to talk to a press on a limited scope of services. But again, we would prefer, and I don't want to say the prefer, everything comes through the board. I do want to address your question, though, about grants and some reporting requirements, because we recognize that you're beginning to start your 2024 budget, 25 budget. And although this is looking back, is that when we start to identify some items that we think should be incorporated from a policy standpoint, those things we will accelerate in our scope based upon our discussions with you, so that whoever the point person is, those will be in some early reports. Here's some initial findings we're finding. We think these are timely because you're jumping into your budget cycle, and we're assuming you want to try to improve your operational performance going forward, so these mistakes don't happen in the future. So we will make sure that those occur in a timely fashion, tied into the grants as well.
Thank you. Ms. Azak.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Just a quick question, and I apologize. I'm flipping through the pamphlet. The size of the audit firm. How many members are going to be part of the actual audit at Central?
Oh, okay. So our firm is about 1,400 people. We have at least 10 offices from Washington, D.C. to Boston. So we would be your team here. And we have 2 individuals that we have selected. One, Cynthia Brownfelder, and then you see Anna D'Oliveria. One is a manager, and the other is a senior. And so, again, once we understand the scope a little bit better, we would utilize those other teammates to perform certain of the analyses and certain of the data testing and things of that nature. And of course, if there's a reason to, we can always supplement our team if we need to. And, we can do that for a number of reasons. If we run into complexities, if the data is more voluminous than what we thought, we can always add teammates either at the partner level or at the manager level, depending on what we need. And the other reason why we might, if you instruct us to add people, is time. If you would like us to complete this exercise a little bit faster, if it makes sense, we can add more people in order to do that. But it doesn't always equate that way. Sometimes it just does take time. But sometimes you can add a few people and get through data just a little bit faster.
So, 1,400 as far as the audit firm, 1,400.
Yes.
But how many would actually, just a ballpark idea, would physically be at Central doing the actual audit?
Okay.
Because we probably have to allocate some space for
Right.
them, especially if they're going to be there for a while doing the audit.
Right. So you'll see in the proposal that there's sort of 6 main people. It's the 4 people you see here, plus Cynthia and Anna. And so that would really be the core team. And then we had a couple of other resources who have, similar deep expertise in the industry, both on the forensic side and in the budget and audit side. So one is Fran McInerney and the other is Richard Corcoran. So we don't anticipate they would be day-to-day. We think the 6 of us would be day-to-day. Now, when I say day-to-day, I would anticipate there probably would be 4 people here part-time each week. And I think we'll be here more at the beginning and at the end. And at some point in the middle, we'll have a lot of data. We'll have Excel spreadsheets and access to financial reporting, and a lot of that we can probably do in our office efficiently. And if it's easier if we're less of a burden and we don't need to be here, we're happy to go back to the office for a while and then come back. But that's loosely sort of how we thought. That's usually how it goes. But again, you're the client, so we'll listen to whatever makes the most sense. But we will have to be here at some point, at least in the beginning, to have interviews. And I know there was a question about space. So we would need a private space, somewhere where we can talk to people privately. It doesn't necessarily need to be secured, because anything that we bring in, we will take with us, like laptops and things like that.
Thank you. One last question. So we're dealing with a $220+ million budget.
Yeah.
Just if you can give us an idea of what other district, given the size similar to Brockton, have you worked with in comparison as far as our budget, the size of our district, just to get a ballpark idea how long it took that district when you did their audit, just to give us a ballpark idea. We're not looking to rush. I'd rather be thorough.
Right.
But I also want to have an idea of this is on average what we would be looking for. Best case scenario, worst case scenario, probably.
Right. So it varies depending on what the issues are. Do you have a ballpark?
No, because we don't have enough information to ballpark anything. That's part of the beginning of the process, to try to understand things, get access to data and review it. And then we'd be able, in a better position to kind of give you a ballpark. But we don't, just like you don't know, we don't know what happened and how it happened and the data that's available and that type of thing. So after that initial learning and gathering of data, then we can come back to you with a better timeline.
Right. So we understand it's hard to make a decision when it seems so up in the air. So if on pages 6, so I tried to give you sort of a sample of how the calendar might look. And again, we're happy to, calendar.
In the proposal. Not in the slide.
I'm sorry, in the proposal. I'm sorry. Yes, in the proposal on pages 6 and 7, I tried to map out what I thought a timeline would look like, and that's assuming that we could start the engagement pretty much right away. So if we were engaged right away and we could start early December, you might be seeing, a month and a half for the first phase and then another month for the second phase. And then if we needed more time to draft our findings, it might extend a little bit beyond that. Like, I was trying to think about the cadence of your school committee meetings. So I'm just thinking it's going to be a couple of, if you want to think about it in your cadence, I would say it's going to be a couple of meetings after we get engaged, before we really even have, preliminary findings, and then maybe another school committee meeting where we'll give you sort of a draft, and then maybe another school committee meeting when maybe we're ready to go, sort of live after we've had the back and forth with you and you've fully vetted the report. So but at this point, that's just sort of a mapping in my mind of how it might go, and it's probably not that far off based on our experience. But again, all of this is really led by you and what your preferences are, what your concerns are, and we'll work with you to build a plan that makes sense, that will be efficient but thorough.
Okay. The whole reasoning behind my question is it going to be an everyday thing? We're going to have you, the group there every day working on this. It's not going to be sporadic. That was pretty much behind my questioning.
Yes.
It's going to be every day, every day, every day. We're designated to Brockton. We're going to be working with Brockton, doing the audit, because I find things take time.
Right.
Especially when it comes to our district and other stuff that we go through.
Right.
And it's just, again, we don't want to rush this, but we also don't want to drag this on. And we definitely need the firm to be here and focusing on Brockton.
Yes.
So that was pretty much behind my question.
No, we understand that. That's really our bread and butter, is responding to kind of crises. People want to know yesterday, how did this happen? So we're very accustomed to that. But just know that it's not practical for us to be here every single day for weeks and weeks and weeks. And it's not because we don't want to, but we make a data request. We kind of have to get out of your hair while you gather that data, and then once it's available, we're happy to come right back. But as a practical matter, if you don't see us here every single day for 60 days in a row, that's why. And that's pretty typical on how these investigations go. And again, that's also going to dictate the timeline, because if we don't have data to analyze, it's going to take, you're just going to push the calendar out a little bit. So that's where it's going to be really important for us to have a point person as part of the client team, so that if we're not getting data, we're not just waiting. We'll let you know. It's been a little while, and we could use your help to speed that up a little bit.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Thank you. I know you said you had a staff member that speaks a different language, but once this audit is complete, are you able to provide those documents in all the languages that the school district provides?
Yes.
French, Haitian Creole, and so forth. How many languages can you guys break that down into?
Well, we were prepared to do the 4: English, Portuguese, Spanish, and French. Okay. So we will make that happen. And if there's other languages, give us some lead time, and we could do that as well.
Okay. Just one more question so I can give the other. This is just to piggyback off my colleague, Mr. Sullivan. With all the auditing that your firm has been, has done in the past, I don't want to say give me a percentage. Have you come across where it's actually turned into a criminal investigation, or was it more of policies that weren't just followed?
All right. As far as, we'll say, a deficit situation, it's been my experience, it's more policies and monitoring and that type of thing. So usually if somebody, again, not always, nothing's absolute, but if somebody is stealing money, they're not going to steal so much that it's going to cause a deficit that it would be obvious. So normally they're trying to be below the radar. So as far as budget deficits, I would expect it is more that, but we have the team to look at it no matter what it is. usually actual fraud investigations, there might be in other areas like student activities and other things that have usually less robust controls.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and in the interest of time, I want to thank the team from PKFOD for presenting and just give us some time to get through the other two audit firms, and we appreciate your time.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to invite the team from RSM US. I don't know if they are in the other room. Do you mind? Are they outside? I think there's another team outside as well.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Okay. Okay. Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate it. And whenever you are ready, you can come up to the podium and we'll be eager to hear what you have to say.
Distribute them. Oh, sure. So I guess I'll pass these around, make it easier.
For your slides, you have this remote right here. So
What's that?
That remote controls the slides.
Oh, okay. Did
So
we
you can
pass
just
some
go
slides? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, fancy. Thank you. I'll control the slides.
Sure.
Perfect.
Ready?
Sure. Well, thank you, everyone, for having us. I'm Greg Naviloff at RSM. I'm a partner. We've got a slideshow that we'll walk through. We'll present some of our qualifications. We'll understand that there's going to be a Q&A to follow as we're walking through our materials. Obviously, if you have any questions, feel free to interject and jump in with any questions you may have. But just want to say thank you for having us this evening. Dan, do you want to do a brief intro?
Sure, yep. So if we could move that presentation forward, I'm not sure who's controlling. Oh, you got it? There we go. So just take an opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Dan Bonnet. I'm an audit partner based out of Boston. I lead our public sector industry practice and have for about 12 years now. So while I am external audit by background, I do oversee all of the work that we do in the industry here in not just Boston, but really New England. And I also serve as a member of the National Public Sector Industry Leadership Team. So, Jay?
Sure. So a little bit more about myself. I am a partner here in the Boston office for RSM. I lead our forensic investigation and dispute services practice. I am also, that's for New England, the local practice, and I also lead nationally our state and local practice, helping provide financial advisory services throughout the country. 25 plus years of experience. Began my career doing financial statement audits and moved primarily into providing forensic services risk advisory service and compliance services for both public and private clients. Chris?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Fitzgerald. I'm a director in the Boston office at RSM. I work in our financial investigations and dispute advisory practice. I've been doing financial investigations for about 12 or 13 years. At RSM, I'm responsible for data analytics within our financial investigations practice. So any sort of technology involved in an investigation, that's kind of my primary area of focus. I've worked with a lot of agencies in the state of Massachusetts and elsewhere, as well as the U.S. Attorney's Office, the FBI, and other enforcement agencies on investigations. And Dan, do you want to?
Yep. So just a couple of other folks here. They're not with us tonight, but just to highlight some members of our team. So Clara Ewing and Katie Barry. I'm sorry. Yep. All right, is that better? Yeah. So Clara Ewing is actually based out of our Melbourne, Florida office, but she does oversees a lot of the work that we do in dealing with school districts across the country. Katie Barry is out of our Chicago office. She also is a specialist in service to school districts across the country. Craig Finley is a partner based in our Boston office, and Craig is actually retired assistant superintendent and CIO for the Whitman-Hanson School District. So he had a full career in government before he came to join us. Just a quick overview of our slides here, the first 5 slides, just to talk about who we are as a firm. RSM is the 5th largest firm in the United States. We're also the 5th largest firm in Boston. But we are the single largest firm that's focused on service to the middle market clients. So our service model, our delivery model, is not like your traditional large firm. It's locally based, locally served, with, however, the added benefit of having access to 14,000 employees across the country, so we can find whatever expertise you might need, we can get access to at a moment's notice. So it's a unique aspect of how we deliver our service that differentiates a little bit from our peers. We also, the way that we're structured is by industry. So we have public sector as one of our firm dedicated industries with a national leadership team. As I mentioned at the outset, I serve as a member of that national leadership team. So we have individuals who spend 100% of their time, like myself, doing nothing but public sector. What that allows us to do, in addition to serving your needs, is to ensure that you're not training our people when they come in the door. We understand your business. We understand how you operate. We live and breathe government every day as it relates to school districts. So we serve more than 2,500 public sector clients across the country, 500 governments, more than 200 school districts, including we've served 5 of the 10 largest, as well as locally. We're doing work for Boston Public Schools and a number of other school districts here. So we do have the expertise in specifically dealing with public schools. But again, with access to local resources that have this skill set and access to resources from one end of the country to the other to bring in whatever expertise or specialty that we might need. Now, a little bit about Boston in particular. So RSM Boston is the 5th largest office in the firm. So we're about 900 people located at 80 City Square in Charlestown. We have every specialty represented in our practice or in the firm is in this practice office. And many of our national leaders also actually come from Boston. So we've been fortunate to have a very, very talented group of individuals who sit in leadership roles across the firm. So again, a benefit to you is that you have access not only to people that serve the industry, but the people who are leading the industry, and can keep you not only up to speed with the issues that we're trying to address, but share with you best practices that we're seeing across the country. So that's enough of the overview part of it. I'm now going to hand it over to the experts who are going to talk more specifically about the needs that we'll talk about here tonight. So,
perfect. Proposed procedures. We understand that this is an assessment of budgets, and particularly the most recent budget and budget overruns. this is not unique to our practice and the type of projects that we've been dealing with even in the past few months, helping other state and local communities deal with and understand and investigate and identify the root cause of large budget overruns. Most recently, having performed one with a significant budget overrun project, total budget of $600 million plus, right, and understanding root cause and working through and identifying the stakeholders, understanding the approach, working to develop that approach, and then executing against that approach to deliver a report and information that's meaningful to the stakeholders. As far as our approach here, it's laid out on the slide in terms of what that looks like, and it's consistent with many of our projects where going in, we're looking to understand what's been gathered to date and what is understood to be a common level of facts that have been unearthed or discovered at the point in time that we're coming aboard. So doing that planning and teaming and understanding and really gathering the key documents and information that's going to be relevant to helping us understand what's the starting point. Through that process and through that information gathering, we're going to more succinctly pull together, more of what procedures need to be done and should be done based upon that testing or the analysis, I should say, of the information collected. Part of that is going to potentially rely on data analytics, and we'll speak in a minute more about the type of data analytics and forensic analysis that our team ordinarily does. But we understand the primary work here is to really understand the budget, how it was prepared, levels of approval, the SOPs that the school's relying upon, understanding specifically where the spend occurred, what the verification process was for that spend, and making sure and understanding whether policies and controls were followed. As we're moving through, to the extent that there's issues or items that come up or individuals that come forward with fraud, waste, abuse, other types of misconduct, we would bring those to light. We plan on meeting regularly. We'll establish a cadence with the stakeholders that we'll be reporting to as part of the investigation, making sure that information that we're gathering is shared as near time as possible. As we're looking through information, we imagine that a lot of this will or may be provided in electronic format. There may be information such as emails. There may be information that's stored electronically. There may be information stored on laptops or other types of devices that we may need to gain access to. We have the capabilities to copy and collect and gather that information as part of our process. So iteratively understanding what information is relevant to getting at the root cause and understanding the issues at hand here. And then the last part of this really is the reporting phase where, as I mentioned earlier on, we'll work to make sure that the report contains the type of information, finding, and remediation activities that are most useful as part of the report out to the school committee. We had prepared some numbers and we've come up with some estimates. This is loosely based upon work that we've done before. No two assessments are necessarily the same. We've baked in some assumptions in terms of the level of effort that would likely go into reviewing and analyzing the budget and doing our assessment. A lot of this is based on understanding that we'll be using some level of data analytics. We'll be reviewing, analyzing, and testing information to make sure goods and services were received. We'll be looking at it forensically to make sure that nothing was altered or fabricated in terms of evidence and supporting delivery of goods and services. And if and where necessary, we can delve deeper into communications between individuals, looking for any evidence of collusion, self-dealing, kickbacks, those type of things that may indicate that there was waste or even worse, fraud or abuse as opposed to potentially some of the overspending. But a lot of this is going to be centered on really understanding the SOPs, the process, doing assessment and review, and understanding how the budgetary process was established, whether those processes were being followed, whether the variances were being reported timely, and understanding where some of the breakdown of the communication may have happened, and using electronic discovery and other means to really do the fact-finding and understand what happened. Same thing? Here it outlines the approximate number of hours, looking at 225 to 375 hours of effort, and that results in a low to high estimate of between around $60,000 and $99,000. This is based on some level of estimation in terms of just how many transactions we would be reviewing and how many people we would be interviewing and speaking with, as well as understanding how many vendors and distributors we would be looking into and potentially doing some level of inquiry or source integrity due diligence work, and understanding whether or not there's any conflicts of interest. Any questions on any of that? Okay. Chris is going to run through a few more slides on e-discovery and then also data analytics. And obviously, if you have any questions through this, just jump in and ask. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. So just wanted to spend a few minutes talking about some of the technology that we employ in these types of matters. The first is what's called e-discovery, and that's kind of outlined here. In many cases, as Greg was mentioning earlier, you're going to have your structured data, like your, the financial data, but then you're also going to have unstructured data, like emails, chat messages, loose documents, things like that. And it's, in many cases that can be quite voluminous. You could have hundreds of thousands of documents, and it can be quite difficult to find kind of the needle in the haystack. So we have many different types of technology kind of at our disposal to take all that data, bring it in, run keywords against it, run conceptual analytics, things like that, to help kind of bring to the top some of the documents and communications that might be most relevant. And this can be really helpful in instances where you know something happened, or you think something might have happened, and you want to kind of understand more about what was going on surrounding that. Were there any meetings taking place around there? Who was communicating with who? Who approved this? That sort of thing. So we don't, it's not 100% necessary in all cases, but we just wanted to share that we do have this type of technology available. Greg, can you move? So I think we could probably move to the next slide. So this is just a quick view of kind of what some of that technology looks like. So you can see it's it can kind of cluster communications conceptually, so you can drill into certain topics. You can look at chat messages, emails, flag certain things for further review and whatnot. Just wanted to touch base on some of the ways that we use data analytics to run our projects more efficiently. So to Greg's comment earlier about our approach and the number of transactions that we would look at and things like that, the budget here is quite large. I think it's about 220 million. So to look at every single transaction would be not feasible, and it wouldn't be a good use of your money. So we use technology to help find what are the higher risk transactions, what are the higher risk vendors, and things like that. So this is just some examples of the types of tools that we use to do that, to help us more efficiently process data and kind of make those higher risk activities rise to the top. So we have our own kind of proprietary data analytics that we employ, but we also have some kind of what you would call maybe like an off-the-shelf solution. This is an example of one of those called MindBridge that we use. It's a really great tool where you can just take all the data, dump it in. It's going to use machine learning, statistical algorithms, and traditional data analytics to, again, help prioritize, which line items on the budget do we want to drill into, which vendors might be more unusual, which combinations of transactions might be more unusual. So just an example of some of the technology that we use on these types of projects. So we have a couple, I don't know how we're doing on time, but we do have a couple of case studies that we wanted to share. And of course, they're in the materials if you wanted to review them later in more detail. Greg, do you want to speak to this one?
Yeah, sure. So speaking about recent engagements where we've had to review large budgets and spend, we were brought in with the state of Maryland and working with their state agencies, various state agencies, and their Office of Inspector General. As part of that, there was large budgetary overspend related to one of their departments, and as part of that process, we really took a top-down, bottom-up approach to understand what type of procedures would be most beneficial. Worked collaboratively with the stakeholders and individuals to really get a good sense of what happened and how the budget was set, where the issues arose, when they arose, how they were being reported, inconsistencies in communications between individuals, but a lot of it focused on the basic internal accounting controls and understanding operationally where improvements could be made. So this project ended up resulting in a continuation of work to not just leave them with a report that outlined and identified deficiencies, but ways that they could remediate those deficiencies. And these were deficiencies that resulted in a significant budgetary miss. Part of this then results in grant-related issues and complications, particularly related to potentially having to repay state and other agencies as well as federal. So working to help them understand the implications of what happened in terms of some of the accounting concerns. But as we're looking through and trying to help them understand where they need to go, we're continuing to work in a way that adds the most value to the state of Maryland. I don't know how we're doing on time. We can speak. We're late. We're done.
Yeah, not your fault.
Okay. Briefly here, I mean, we've done a lot of work of this type. I won't go into too much detail. We've worked with various state agencies here in the Commonwealth doing similar work. We've worked with school districts doing similar work. We've worked with towns doing similar work. So we've got a significant amount of experience dealing with a very similar problem that you're facing here. And as far as us bringing our thoughts into how we would go about helping you, we're ready to do that. What we pulled together was a budget based upon just generally understanding the need. We do understand from reading in the headlines in the newspapers that there's some areas of concern in terms of spend and controls around spend, but we'd want to work with you and the committee to understand just exactly where do we start, expectations in terms of the report and the deliverables, and where you see the most value from the work that we would provide. I don't have any other prepared materials, but if you've got questions, we're happy to answer. Yeah.
Thank you very much. In the interest of time, I'm going to take the advice of my colleague, Mr. Rodriguez, and we're going to go around the room and give everybody an opportunity to ask one question. Everyone has received the RFP and the materials, so I'm going to start with Mr. Sullivan, and if you'd like to pass on your question, just move to the person to your right. Mr. Sullivan.
Yeah, I have one question about the vendors. Do you think, one of you guys mentioned vendors, I'm not sure which one. Do you think it's possible that a vendor shipped an order to us and we paid them twice? Or something like that happen?
It definitely happens. So my 25 years of being a financial statement auditor and forensic investigator, many of the fraud, waste, and abuse manifests itself through vendors and third parties, conflicts of interest. Can be poor internal controls and understanding whether or not there's a control around making sure that second payment didn't happen. If an invoice comes in twice, it can accidentally be paid twice, or it can intentionally be paid twice. So understanding not just that it was paid twice, but why did it get paid twice is typically key to helping to figure out what next. Are there disciplinary measures that need to be made? Are there internal controls that need to be improved? So really understanding why is a big part of what we're doing and helping our clients.
Thank you.
Ms. Hazak.
Thank you. Actually, very thorough presentation. So you answered a lot of my questions that I was going to ask. So If we can just go back, is it 6 people? Is it going to be a six-person audit team?
Sure. So I think our team that would be doing most of the kind of day-to-day work would probably be 4 to 6 people. Greg would be ultimately responsible for the project. I would be running more of the day-to-day, and then we would probably have like 2 or 3 people, more junior people, helping with the analysis. And then the people like Dan and the other individuals on that second slide who aren't here today, they're more of kind of our subject matter expertise that we would call on, as we dig into. They would help us scope the project, and we would go to them for advice on industry-specific items.
Thank you.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Just briefly to clarify there as well, part of, in the question of vendor arose, we have a government contracting practice. So one of the things that whenever I'm when I'm working in the public sector, I'm typically working with our government contracting specialists to understand, what are the expectations, what are the internal controls that are usually baked into the contracts to deal with the vendors, so that, understanding what good looks like, particularly on the vendor side in the contracting. So that's the other people that we would pull in to help us understand and assess, where things could potentially have been done better.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Thank you. Knowing that the city of Brockton is the most diverse community in the Commonwealth, we have a large population of linguistics. Is your firm able to provide these documents in different languages that we service in the city?
Yep. Yes, absolutely. So RSM is a global firm. So we have, I think the languages that were mentioned were French, Spanish, and Portuguese. So we have offices in Latin America, in Spain, in Portugal, in France, and then we also have hundreds of people. Our firm is we have about 16,000 employees across the country, and within those employees, we have a pretty diverse population of professionals who are fluent in many languages. So we have many resources that we could rely on to do those types of translations, or if we need assistance in maybe presenting our findings and things like that, we have resources that we could bring in to help us with that.
All right, thank you.
I was curious to find out if you how long it's going to take for, during the week. What would be your hours? Would it be part-time? Would it be daily? Would it be, how much accessibility are you going to have to the school?
Yeah, we're flexible in terms of the amount of time that we spend on-site versus remotely, with video conferencing and with remote hybrid. We're very flexible in how we perform these types of assessments. That said, a lot of the work, in whether we're remote or on-site, often is dictated by where the paper is or whether there is paper. If things are electronic in format, we can typically work remotely more easily. So, but we could accommodate our hours on-site to accommodate any restrictions or issues with respect to the timing of the school opening and closing.
And do you have any estimate of time, how long the process would take for you to do?
That's a very good question. So, unfortunately, with any sort of assessment, it's impossible to pin down a precise timeline. But typically, from my experience, we're talking potentially 3, 4, 5 weeks, usually a couple weeks of field work, 2 to 3 weeks of field work. During that time, obviously reporting on a consistent basis based upon a cadence that everyone agrees upon up front in terms of frequency. But getting that information out is obviously of utter importance. So the final report, we would certainly make sure that everyone was included in the draft discussions and making sure that the information that we collected was accurate and complete and met the needs of this committee here. And then a final report may take a little bit longer, as we're going back and forth with drafts before there's a final report that released. So from end to end, it may take 6 to 8 weeks, but generally speaking, we're through the most of the investigation within 3 to 4 weeks.
Thank you.
Hi, I wanted to find out more about your the work you've done for the Boston Public Schools. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so the Boston Public School work is ongoing currently, and it deals with procurement-related issues, which I think you all had seen on the front page of the paper. So we've been continuing our conversations with Boston Public Schools about other things that they want us to focus on, which get into many of these types of issues in terms of procurement, in terms of, fraud, waste, and abuse, and our controls properly aligned. So a lot of that work is similar to this, but we were engaged specifically to deal with that procurement issue at this point.
The question I had was, have you dealt with any resistance or non-cooperating cooperation during an audit, and how have you dealt with that, if you have?
You get some good questions. I like this. All right. Yeah, so it happens, right? So as we're doing assessments or forensic reviews, and we try to make as warm and as friendly an environment as we can, right? We're really fact finders, right? We're not judging. We're not in a position where we view our role as doing that I gotcha. But to the extent that people are uncomfortable meeting with us, obviously we do take the advice of counsel and would be working with any legal advisors you have in terms of how we work with and interview any individuals who may not be willing to have discussions with us. So that we have a very thoughtful approach in and around how we perform interviews with employees and making sure that we're doing it in accordance with all laws and regulations. So that's a loaded question in terms of if someone doesn't want to speak. There's, depending on the situation and employment agreements and union agreements, it really depends on what that path looks like in terms of gaining information and access to information, and also whether or not it's personal devices that we're trying to get access to or whether it's school-owned devices. But we've been through this hundreds, if not thousands of times, where we're trying to gain information and access to information where there's a bump in the road where we're trying to collect information and we're trying to work around hurdles to get that information. And by and large, we're working with the stakeholders. We're working with the council and legal to make sure we're doing the work compliant with all laws and regulations.
Just to add to that, from a technology perspective too, in many cases what we do is we try to just get everything up front. So you don't have to do as much of kind of the back and forth with people. So, you maybe find someone who's trusted in the IT department, someone who's trusted in the finance department, gather all that information up front without having to go through so many channels and so many people. And that way we have it and we can work with it, and then we don't run into those roadblocks, as we progress through the project.
Thank you.
Mr. Homer?
Sure, thank you. I think earlier in the presentation you mentioned using technology to kind of narrow down to like the major issues, major focus areas for risk, for cost and oversights. And I thought you might have mentioned something about the complexity of trying to go line by line through everything. And I think the folks in the city are interested in a real comprehensive audit. What I was going to ask is, in terms of best practices in the industry, because I don't know this, so I have to ask, do you typically look at, when we identify a budget overrun in a certain year, like the 2023 school year, are you typically looking at 2, 3, 4 years back as well? Is there a standard practice of how many years you look at, how many different budgets you look at to aggregate the data and kind of identify trends or things like that? Versus just focusing on 1 year's budget? Is there a standard industry practice that we would maybe anticipate you guys exploring?
Yeah, so when you're talking about trends, obviously the more data you have, the better. That's the short answer, but on the other side of that, it's a cost, right? Collecting and analyzing that information. So we do try to come up with an approach that everyone agrees to in terms of how far back to look. A lot of the questions around what we call the scope period. Who are the individuals involved in governance? Who are, if there's any individuals of interest in terms of their roles and responsibilities, how long were they in charge and responsible? So we try to find the time period that makes the most sense based upon the involvement of individuals in the process and where there may have been areas of concern. So we will set the parameters typically around the problematic spending or budget cycles or whatever that may look like. But to your point, if all else fails and you don't have any of that, 2 to 3 years is typically what you would use. So good choice, and looking at a sample of years just to understand what the ups and downs look like. The thing that we've noticed in our profession is things can get hidden in even a balanced budget, right? So doesn't mean that you've got good spend even though that budget line item remained flat. If that budget line item should have gone down, take for example IT spend. Everyone expected IT spend to probably go down, but an excuse was made to keep IT spend higher than it should have been. Then you could have been hiding improper spending in those type of accounts.
Yeah, I think also, to the extent that it's available, getting kind of benchmark data, so going beyond just historical budgets for this school district, also looking to see if there's other, kind of publicly available data to look, to see in other school systems of similar size, what is this type of cost, as a percentage of the total budget and things like that, and using that as an analytic as well.
Thank you.
It's a good point that Chris brought up. A couple of the investigations / assessments we've done, it's really that assessment of benchmarking versus others that really popped out. Okay, wow, why is this happening? So, all of our work is predicated on having good quality access to data information, being able to line it up with internal, external data points, and doing the data analytics that Chris explained, meaning what are the outliers, right? So a lot of it comes down to what data do you have and can you collect.
Excellent. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Great presentation. I don't have a question, but I do want to say that I appreciate your blended rate versus partner versus staff member. I appreciate that. So thank you very much for your time, and have a great night.
Thank you. Very good.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks, everyone.
At this time, we are going to invite the final audit firm, which is Markham LLP, and Ms. Campbell is going to go get them. They're in the other room.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
So they're next. Oh, okay, she went to get them.
Is that off of that?
Yeah, they said it's 35% off, so it's 99.
Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. And we are ready whenever you are.
Great. Thank you very much. On behalf of Markham, we'd just like to thank Brockton for allowing us to propose on this. My name is Jim Lowe. I'm in charge of internal audit services for Markham. We have a quick agenda we'll go through. We have with us today that I'll ask my colleagues to introduce themselves. We'll spend most of the time on the ask and the solution. We do have a section for questions, but if there are questions throughout, please raise your hand and we'll address them throughout the presentation. So like I said, my name is Jim Lowe. I have 30 years of experience, professional services. I began my career with KPMG and I came over to Markham about 3 weeks ago. I've been on both the external audit side and the internal audit side, and I currently lead up internal audit services for Markham. Jim?
Good evening. I'm Jim Wilkinson. I'm an assurance partner in our Providence office with Markham. I have a little over 38 years of experience. I'm a licensed CPA in both Massachusetts and Rhode Island. I also hold a information technology designation issued by the AICPA. I've been working with governmental clients my entire career. Current client base in the governmental arena ranges from the state of Maine, the state of Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania. Scott?
And I'm Scott McIntyre, I'm also an assurance partner with Markham. For the first 35 years of my career, I was with Melanson, sometimes referred to as Melanson Heath, large regional firm that focused almost all of its audit work here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. In January, Melanson merged with Markham, and presently I lead the governmental assurance practice here in New England. Many of our clients are regional to Brockton, whether it be Randolph, Hanover, Weymouth, the town of Easton, East Bridgewater. Many of our current clients are local to the community here. So we're in the area a fair amount. And like I said, for 35 years I've been auditing cities and towns and school districts in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Have a breadth of knowledge of people at both the Department of Revenue, Division of Local Services, and I'll mess up the name. I'll call it DESE. I still refer to it as Department of Education, but I know it's changed. But lots of contacts with both Division of Local Services and DESE. Mike?
And last on the introductions, I'm Mike McShay. I'm a director in our Boston practice for Markham. I've spent just about 30 years both working in public accounting firms as well as in industry, in a variety of industries, doing internal audit. And internal audit is focused on investigations, examination of controls, looking for control breakdowns in areas of improvement or efficiencies. So I'd be working with the team if we're chosen to represent the school committee in this project, and would look forward to those opportunities. So I'll turn it back over to Jim, who's going to guide us through a little bit more of a presentation. Thank you.
So just real quickly on the ask, you're looking for a partner or vendor to work with the town to look at your 2023 fiscal deficit. The approach that we take, and we're going to go into further details in our approach, it's really twofold. We want to identify the root cause of what caused this. In addition, we want to look at the overall control environment. And the reason why we want to look at the control environment is to provide suggestions, whether enhancements or new controls, to ensure this doesn't happen again. There's obviously completeness, accuracy, segregation of duties, cutoffs are the areas that we would focus on, but it's really to try to get to that cause and then ultimately create a solution so it wouldn't happen again. Mike, do you want to take us further through the solution?
Sure. So the intent of the next couple of slides is again to talk about what Markham can do and what Markham can bring to the table with regards to the ask that you've put before us. So with the experience that we have, as you've seen from the gentlemen that have introduced prior to my speaking, Markham's team is well versed in the areas of municipalities, in the areas where you've asked the questions around budgets, controls over budgets, potential budget deficits, and situations that have arisen. We'd be looking to bring solutions to you around the areas, as Jim had mentioned as well, potential breakdowns in controls. Is there something that wasn't communicated? Where's there information that wasn't provided? When we take a look at some of the funds and usages of funds that a school would have, there could be situations that arise where payroll is an area that has exceeded what was originally budgeted for. Vendor payments, potentially again an area where we could see excesses. Cutoff issues from prior years. Municipalities are no different than anyone else in terms of trying to keep the accounting straight between fiscal years, or what impact that could potentially have. And if it's not noticed or detected or in a timely manner or communicated, it could continue to escalate. And certainly there are grants and programs at the local and state level that offer and interject funding into school systems. Those can be areas where there's rules and regulations around the management of it. How do we handle it? How do we account for it? Was it anticipated? The expenditures that we might have that are associated with these sources of funds. There's also uses of resources that are going to increase areas that we've potentially talked about where we could have excessive payroll or unplanned payroll expenditures or vendor expenditures. So there's a broad spectrum of things that could happen. We're here to try and look at it with you. The part of the solution we're also going to bring, obviously, is our years of experience. As has been mentioned, Melanson CPAs has joined us as well. That's bolstered not only the bench strength that we have in this sector, but the knowledge that we're able to bring to the table to assist you. Our folks are in demand from the standpoint of the knowledge that they have, being able to share that information throughout the communities of the state. We also are a full-service firm, so the reason that last bullet is there to give some depth and breadth to what Markham does and can do, so it's not a one-stop shop. We have full capabilities and are able to draw on subject matter expertise from across various disciplines within the firm itself. Jim, I can continue through this, yeah. So when we're talking about providing the services, it's a holistic approach that the firm would take. We have a multidisciplinary team with us here tonight. What would drive it is our advisory practice that Jim and I are representing, specifically in the internal audit services. We would be the arms and legs to come in, do the analyses, take a look at what happened, looking at controls, control breakdowns, looking at budgets, expenditures, budget to actual analyses, and all of that type of information. The team that you see is a local team. That's why we're here representing tonight. You know, we're not going to bring in people tonight and then somebody else shows up to do the work. We have the depth and breadth of knowledge and the ability to provide comprehensive services. We would bring you open and ongoing communication. Certainly you'd want to know if Markham was doing the work, where do we stand, what have we seen, what are we seeing? Are we having any areas of difficulty either in communication or obtaining information? It wouldn't be wait till the end and then here's a report and let's figure out what happened. Folks want to know what's going on, and if there's something that we're seeing, we want to be able to bring that to you and communicate it. So we'd set up a structure where we would have either Zoom calls or certainly in person, however it is determined to be most effective to be able to give you the information that we're seeing as close to real time as we can, a schedule that works for everybody in this room. And obviously collaborative and proactive approach. It isn't a one-size-fits-all for anyone. It isn't a cookie-cutter, off-the-shelf type of program that would be bringing. We need to understand with you what happened, where do we need to go to get to a solution. So our team would be flexible enough to be able to bring that answer to you. I think there's a little bit more information. Jim, you wanted to take us through this and then take us to conclusion so we can get to any questions that you folks have tonight.
Yeah. This slide just depicts the process that Mike described. I think on the lower left-hand side is really the focus where we would want to have an ongoing communications with the committee as we identify issues, periodic report outs. If there are items that come up, we would use the normal escalation mechanism in place to get to the committee to alert them of what we're finding. It's not an approach where we wait to the end to have a final draft report and our conclusions. In summary, some of the points that we wanted to highlight: the 45 years of experience in auditing Massachusetts local government is what this team brings. We will have a seasoned team, as you can see from the folks. We probably represent 125 years of auditing experience amongst the four of us in some capacity in different areas. We're committed to providing value-added services that's cost-effective. We'll work with you on that, and our approach is tailored to you. We want to be sure upfront that we've identified the appropriate risks and procedures in order to identify the root cause and ultimately recommendations for future improvements so the issue will not happen again. I don't know, guys, if you wanted to add anything else.
Sure, I would just add that, you know, of the 45 years experience, I think I actually meant to touch on this when I introduced myself earlier. You know, the combined firm, Melanson, now part of Markham, we probably audit about 100 communities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Just wanted to throw that out there, tell you about the depth of our experience. In my experience, I've come across a situation like the one you have here in Brockton a couple of times over my career. No two cases that I have found to be the same, but some of the things that were up there on a few slides ago, the circuit breaker grant, the charter school, the inflows and the outflows. Your ask is really about the general fund over expenditure. But with all of the sources of funding, especially over the last 3 years, throw ESSERS in there, a COVID-related grant. These are funding sources that would need to be part of the analysis to understand if something in prior years, prior to 23, if if a funding source of a one-time grant or a new grant, like the ESSERS was used to fund certain operating costs and wasn't available in subsequent years, could that have generated some of the things that might have gone wrong here? So just wanted to take another minute, kind of tell you a little bit about the depth of our experience and why we think looking beyond the general fund is going to be critical to finding the answers that you folks want.
And if I could mention as well, the importance of the slide that Jim had with the iterative approach at the end. This engagement, while it'll be conducted by an external independent firm, the involvement of the committee and insights when we start coming to you with what we're observing, what maybe some of our preliminary conclusions are, but to get your input on those, how that's the history of how those may have happened over years. It's critical importance that it's a team sport. It is really a collaborative effort between your external independent firm and your knowledge internally to help bring this entire process in with sunlight and transparency to see what's really happened.
Thank you. So if you don't mind, we're going to start a round of questions. I'd like to begin with Mr. Sullivan.
Good evening. They only give us one question, so I'm going to make it quick.
They being me.
I'm guessing you have done this similar audit before in other school districts?
Yes.
My question is, our deficit is $14.4 million. Have you ever gone into a school district and not found the deficit? Or didn't know where it went? Or couldn't figure it out?
Meaning why it happened?
No, couldn't figure out where it went. You couldn't come up with a solution where it went.
No, we've always been able to figure it out.
Thank you.
Ms. Azak.
Thank you. Again, one question. School district similar to Brockton. Just a ballpark idea. How long did it take you? Again, we're not looking to rush the process, but we'd like to get an idea of what, on average, how long it would take your firm in years past. If you had something similar to Brockton's, the size of our district, any other school. Just how many hours or how many months, how many weeks, on average?
I'm not sure I can really give you an average, because I walked into one situation where a much smaller city than Brockton had a $4 million deficit, and quite honestly, we were able to figure it out in a couple of days. There's another town that I can recall. This one isn't too far from where we sit tonight. Took about 6 to 8 weeks. So there's no two situations are alike, and you have to look at not only budget to actual trends, but budget to budget trends. What was the budget in 20, and what was it in 22 and 23, and where were there increases, where were there decreases? It's a rather in-depth process. The one that we probably solved within a couple of days, it was just too easy.
Thank you.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you. Knowing that Brockton is the most diverse community in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and we service a lot of linguistics here, are you able to provide the findings in your final report in every language that we do provide here in the district?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, could you give an example of a complex audit that you've done and how you resolved it?
Complex?
Yeah.
We could all do that. You want to take it, Jim?
How much time?
Yeah, we said we were only given 15 minutes. That could take 15 hours. Probably the most complex audit that, or I'll call it a special project, has involved, it's unrelated to this particular one, but the most complex one that's quickly coming to mind is water and sewer billing errors, where the meter reader which fed into the billing system, was passing through a wrong conduit. And so by a factor of 10, there was a mistake in the water bills. This is a process that probably took us 3 months to uncover, and I'll defer to some of the others to maybe talk about other complex problems, but that is the most complex problem that I, in my 35 plus years, have it's probably caused some of the gray hairs that you see.
Suppose I could add to that. When we're talking about general experience and the folks on the team, when we talk about something that's complex, it doesn't deal directly with the school or a school budget. But one of the things that I spent probably 3.5 months on was a fraud investigation at a financial institution, and just the peeling back of the onion that we had to go through to uncover what the root cause was, where it started. So we went from, and I was assigned to lead this particular project where we thought it was a few dollars, and I'm not picking fraud for any other reason other than it was a complex engagement. It went from a few $100s to well over $100,000 in a very complex scheme that an individual had put in place with multiple fake entities, multiple names, multiple accounts. So it took a lot of thought and effort to figure out. It was almost like an analysis of handwriting at a point to say this signature over here just randomly looks like the one I'm looking at over here, and then go off and do an investigation of that to uncover that it was actually involved. So from my experience, that was a very complex and involved engagement. We got to the end, as we always seem to be able to, but it certainly was eye-opening as well, just the trail that you have to follow to get to an answer sometimes.
If I could add a bit of that to that. Most of the work that we do is complex. There are volumes of transactions that, it's not a simple little spreadsheet. It's, millions of transactions, thousands of lines. And the complexities really come into play between disciplines. If we're looking at control processes, which are mostly, a lot of times they're described narratively, there may be some flow charting that we'll do, but then taking the knowledge that we gain there on how the transactions are designed to flow through the system, and then using some of our computer techniques. We have a data analysis group that will get involved with the transaction analysis and scoring certain transactions for testing perhaps. But then it's blending those together. That's really where some of the complexities come in, is how do we take something that may be written in French and compare it to something in a different language, and how do we come up with a commonality and transactions that fall out of that comparison that are likely problematic. It's not just all number crunching, it's not just all narratives and flowcharts, it's where those two things collide, and the knowledge that we developed over the years on how things are supposed to work, how things are supposed to get reported externally within the financial statements to the regulating entities, so the grantors, where are the incentives, where are the gaps in that process, and taking that complexity and synthesizing it to some recommendations at the end, and ultimate explanations of how we got to where we are today. It's a lot of fun, actually. But
sounds riveting.
My question was, what strategies do you employ to ensure confidentiality and integrity during your audit?
We have a whole quality assurance review as part of any service that we would provide to any client to ensure confidentiality. That's part of, actually, we put our own work papers together as part of our product for purposes of ensuring that we're keeping to those standards. Where obviously we're going to work within the confines of Brockton and any of the requirements that you have, but as part of the profession, that is one of our biggest items that we adhere to.
Could you tell me how many hours per week are you going to be on site at the school?
We would like to be on site as much as possible. Obviously, if there's space available, our preference is to be on site in a post-COVID world.
Thank you.
Mr. Homer? Okay. I want to thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation tonight and your time. Excellent job. You answered our questions, and that's the purpose of this evening, is for us to find the right firm that's going to get us back on track and, find the solution to this problem. And so thank you so much for your time, and we will let you know.
Appreciate your time.
Of course. Have a good night.
holiday, everyone.
As well with you. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to number 6, which is discussion and potential vote. I want to open it up to see if everybody even feels as if they are in a position to make a vote, or if we just want to have a discussion. So I kind of want to open the floor to everyone to see if you have questions, and let's just talk about it. We had 3 really good firms.
Second one, I felt really comfortable with them going into the school with the people.
The second one or the first one?
The second one?
Yeah.
This one here, I think, would be very intimidating. I don't know.
They were enough for me.
The last one's a no for you?
The last one was enough for me.
Okay. That's absolutely.
Yeah, I'm in
Thoughts?
agreement. The last one, I would say, is a no. Their document wasn't very
See,
complete.
I
would say it was like
looking
I'm
for
gonna say it's a no. Their document's not complete. Like the other two,
Yeah, the proposal, it's all.
the other 2 companies gave us like more thorough. They put more thought into what they were presenting.
RSM?
Both
like
RSM and PFK. They put just more thought into it. I would say that I would lean more towards RSM. Yeah.
I liked how RSM gave hours and pricing with their proposal here.
They had it in the RFP, but I liked how it was in the proposal as well. And they have a blended rate, whereas the first RFP was the most expensive. And they separate their rates by the level of their staff. So staffing's lower, and then partner is higher, and
Yeah, I'm good with
so that's why I appreciated RSM saying like their blended rate is a flat rate. But I want to open the floor up to Ms. Azak, please.
Thank you. So out of the 3 candidates, PFK, I just felt after that presentation, I still had a lot of questions. Nice presentation, but it didn't answer my questions. RSM answered a lot of my questions by actually just looking at their packet, down to, you don't know what you're walking into, but they can estimate the amount of hours. Like I said, their packet answered a lot of my questions as I was flipping through there. And the one thing I did like is they will go to a direct contact. Rather, the first company said, we're going to submit a request, and if we don't get anywhere, we'll reach out to contact. The second group, RSM, indicated they would, and it makes sense to have a direct contact in those departments that they can go to if they have questions on things. So RSM, again, very thorough. Presentation. I get it. The last group, I thought they were informative, and they did touch base on a couple of things that the other 2 didn't. They were talking about the ESSER, which, yes, we had the ESSER, we had funding the past few years, so that does make a difference. No one touched base on those. Again, they probably, might have had that in the back, but they didn't touch base on it tonight.
I thought I heard that, though. Something about.
That was the third group, the ESSER. Yeah, the third group actually has the ESSER in their. Again, presentation-wise, I mean, I'll be honest. I thought they were knowledgeable, but if I was to go, I want thorough, and I found that RSM was very thorough and provided a lot of information. Kind of left the guessing game, guessing out of it for me. So I would go RSM and Markham, and then PKF. That's the order I would go in.
Excellent, thank you so much. And Mr. Sullivan?
Yes. I was going to say that the only firm that I ever heard of was Markham. I see them advertised on TV. The others I've never heard of, but I thought RSM was top of the line. They seemed to answer all the questions, and they left no stones unturned, I thought.
Excellent, thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Rodriguez?
I was more in tune to RSM. A lot of the things that struck me is specifically here, performing searches of email communications, and developing a timeline. Who knew what and when, individuals involved in potential inappropriate activity, and then also with their presentation was top to bottom. At one point, it felt, I can't say, I mean their background, but they were seasoned. They knew exactly. It didn't leave much room to ask a lot of questions, even though we have our questions that we have to answer. And I strongly feel that with their timeline, their expertise, and the work that they've been done and also involved in, that this will probably be the one of our best choices to move forward in making sure that we get an accurate audit of everything that we're dealing with today. So that would be my number one choice moving forward.
Yeah. Mr. Homer?
I think there's professionals from RSM and from PKF who had experience working in municipalities and CFO positions and things. I didn't hear too much, but we didn't really ask on that for the third group from Markham. Certainly they said working in municipalities, but among the staff that was here tonight, I mean, we had at least 2 people from PKF and RSM who have worked in the position who would probably walk in expecting to know exactly what they're looking for. I just envision that the bigger thing is what Greg from RSM was talking about, was working on identifying, communicating with the body about what is the scope of what they're looking for. I think we have to rely on some experience from professionals who do this kind of work to guide our process and to advise us on what they would want to see. I think RSM or Markham would be good choices.
Excellent. I will say that PKFOD, let me make sure I'm saying this right. Yeah, PKFOD was the most expensive and almost $100,000 more than the other 2. And so with that being said, we're dealing with a deficit here, and we have to be cognizant of the fact that, this isn't a never-ending well that we're asking for funds. And so I think we need to be diligent in terms of the money we're spending even on the audit. But I would agree with all of you that I think that RSM was absolutely my first pick. I love their e-technology. To Mr. Rodriguez's point, to be able to look at thousands of emails and be able to use statistical data to be able to pull all that together, that was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
It was really impressive. And so I would entertain a motion if somebody would like to. Oops, the mayor's going to speak.
Sorry. No worries. Yeah, you can help me. No, I mean, I share the same sentiments. I thought,
Okay.
I mean, this isn't any of our skill sets, right? So they're all professionals. But if you're going to rank them, I think RSM. I think if you're going to rank them, I think RSM without question, the e-technology, the fact that one of the gentlemen has worked with the U.S. Attorney's Office, with the FBI, they do their due diligence before they select someone. So the price point is extremely important as well. The first group, they were good, but they're expensive. And the last one were okay as well, but my vote would be on number 2. The only thing I'd ask, though, is would it be fair to 2 of our colleagues that aren't here tonight, that haven't had the ability to look at this, to take a vote tonight? I just throw that out there. We all had the opportunity to come here tonight, but Mrs. Rivas-Mendez and Mrs. Sullivan aren't here tonight, so I'm not trying to slow anything down.
No,
I
that's
just
a good
want to throw
point.
that out there out of respect for them.
That's actually a good point. We can put the vote on. Mr. Rodriguez.
Just to piggyback, off, RSM, without looking at the price tag, I was already sold by their presentation. So let's just take the money part about it. That having expertise and working with the FBI and the technology service that really sold me, regardless of knowing what the price tag is. But obviously, this advisory committee correct me if I'm wrong, we're only making a recommendation to the full committee where the full committee will take the vote of, so I think we make the vote tonight as recommending whatever firm that we select, and then it'll come back to the full committee to make the final approval, because it does, this is an advisory committee. Then the committee will make the final determination on that.
Excellent point, Mr. Rodriguez. Thank you. So, Mr. Sullivan?
Yes, I would like to make a motion that this Audit Selection Advisory Committee selects RSM as their auditor.
Well, we're not going to make a vote to confirm that. We're going to make a vote to recommend them, and then we'll take a final vote when Ms. Sullivan and Ms. Rivas-Mendez are back. So
Just to recommend?
Yes. Thank you.
Second.
Okay, and can I see a show of hands? Does everybody agree? Excellent. Okay, thank you so much. And with that being the end of this meeting, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, excellent, properly seconded. I'll give this one to Mr. Homer.
Show of hands.
Show of hands. Excellent. Thank you, everybody, for your time tonight. Yes, absolutely. I would like to thank all of you so much for being part of this process. Yeah, Dr. Cobbs just said you've done good. So thank you so much for participating in this and being part of it, and joining us on in this process. And please, we invite you back to any of the future meetings with the results. We'd love to have you be part of those meetings as well, to see the fruits of your labor and how this all turns out.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.